It's the Tuesday, June 21st edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. I'm Greg Pickel, joined as I am every Tuesday by BWI Recruiting Insider Ryan Snyder. Ryan, we're inching closer to July, and that means the June quiet period where prospects can come to campus is about to be over, and that usually means a bunch of commitments are coming. We're going to get into a bunch of the news of the weekend in terms of which players were in town, how their experiences went, and at least two of them have so far set decision dates a little bit later in the show. But we're going to start first with Tomarrion Parker. He's a player they call TJ in the Lash building, and he's a big-time defensive lineman, one of On3's highest-rated defensive linemen in the class of 2023, Ryan. And you've logged an RPM prediction, an On3 recruiting prediction machine pick for Penn State to land him coming out of the weekend. What changed here? Let's start there. Why is Penn State catapulted to the top of a recruitment that it was in for quite some time, as we knew by the official visit being scheduled, but certainly never felt like they were the leader until now?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably oversimplifying it, but he visited, and he's never visited before, and that's a massive part of it, right? I mean, there's been a relationship here for a long time. In the fall, I was told, hey, we have a growing relationship with him. It's going well. The family connected with us well, and all that. But it was really more so in recent months. I'd say February, March, April, where I heard a lot more about TJ and just that growing relationship, and that Penn State had a foot in the door here more than most recognize. So, of course, when you've never been able to visit and you already have a growing relationship that's probably gone underreported, that's when you get these results. And TJ hasn't committed as of this podcast, but I do think that commitment is coming, and it's coming soon. Penn State really just kind of won out with their family vibe and all that kind of stuff that we talk about so often, man. And that's what I've heard from a lot of different people. I haven't personally spoken with TJ yet. I'm hoping to do that here really as soon as possible. But Penn State thinks that they've got a quality player here. He's ranked in the top 100 in both the On3 consensus and On3. Our scouts at On3 have him at number 71 nationally, and the consensus has him at number 99. But whenever you're a top 100 guy in the On3 consensus, you are a heck of a prospect. All four sites, Rivals, ESPN 24/7, and of course On3, all have him as a 4-star player, and he's a top 200 guy on every single site. So I think that says a lot about the quality player here that Penn State is, I believe, is going to be getting here. But it's not finalized yet. I think we will know very soon, though, as in possibly today, at latest, I think Wednesday. But I think a commitment's coming, and I think it's coming today.
So Parker is, as of we're recording this at about 9:15 Tuesday morning. We're aiming to have it up for you all wherever you get your podcast at bluewhiteillustrated.com and on youtube.com/bluewhiteillustrated around noon. So keep those time marks in mind. And remember, you can find the latest Penn State news by joining us at bluewhiteillustrated.com later today. Ryan, obviously, Penn State has been known for quite some time to jump to the top or near the top of recruitments once it gets guys on campus. You mentioned that being a big factor with Parker here. I know you haven't had a chance to really get in depth with him and get to know him a little bit beyond just surface level. But I mean, just your thoughts on how important it is for Penn State to be able to go into Alabama and likely, as we sit here and land a kid that was visiting Alabama not too long ago. And I had a Michigan State visit, I believe, set up for this coming weekend. And obviously was looking at another number of Southern schools and had a lot of options. And Penn State, just one visit is able to really shoot itself to the top. What does it tell you about both the recruiting effort of John Scott Jr., and Manny Diaz, and James Franklin, and also just where Penn State is as a whole right now?
Yeah, so a couple things there. One, I'd say as of a couple weeks ago, the talk was Florida and Tennessee with TJ, and supposedly the quote was Florida and Tennessee were at the top, and Michigan State was third. So of course you would think Penn State's fourth there on that. I don't I don't know if TJ was underestimating how much he would like Penn State, or if he was just kind of keeping the Penn State ties low, but whenever I would speak with people I trust, they made it very clear that they thought they were firmly in this race. And as I think we'll see here in the near future, I expect him to be a Nittany Lion. But to circle back to the Alabama point, look, I mean, they just got Harrison Wallace there, 2 years ago? Is it? Or is it last year? 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Anyway, recently. So, I mean, they have done a good job in Alabama. Of course, Christian Campbell as well, and I'm sure
Yep.
I'm not thinking of somebody else, but they've been consistent there. It's a very deep state, Alabama, of course, Alabama and Auburn, they recruit nationally, especially Bama, of course, and but Alabama is often, we talk about Georgia and Texas and Louisiana and Florida a lot, but Alabama has a heck of a lot of talent as well. Now, most of the talent Penn State has gotten from there hasn't been quite on the level that TJ is. I mean, we have him at number 8 in the state of Alabama, and the On3 consensus has him at number 11. Usually Penn State gets guys a little bit further down those lists, so this would be arguably their biggest get, although Harrison Wallace, why he may have been as rated as highly as Parker. There's a lot of talk that he's going to be the real deal for Penn State. But let's see. I don't want to get too excited yet, or get fans too excited yet. It's not finalized, but all signs are pointing to Penn State here. I've had colleagues join me in different predictions, and everybody seems to be on the same boat now that TJ Parker should end up a Nittany Lion. But one other thing I would say here too is that I was told that Alan Zamitis had a massive hand in this recruitment, and so did Terry Smith. So I don't want to underestimate John Scott. He's the lead recruiter, and he deserves a ton of credit there. But I want to make sure people also know the work that Alan Zamitis is putting in, especially with these defensive guys. There's been a lot of talk about just from different players I speak with and different people I trust about how much of an impact AZ is having on this recruiting class and some of the younger guys coming up. So I want to make sure AZ gets his due because everybody's raving about his efforts right now.
It's come up in numerous conversations that you and I have had with both recruits and high school coaches and parents. I mean, clearly, the former Penn State letter winner has been a major addition to this Penn State recruiting staff. And it goes to show you that when you add lettermen and guys who have been in this program previously as players, it can go a long way when they're able to sell their experience. We see that with Samitis. We see that with Deion Barnes. We, of course, see that with Terry Smith, Ty Howe as well. So that's all good stuff for Penn State, and obviously has helped in its recruitment and also many other ones as well. Ryan, just one other quick note: Torrance Brown, another Alabama player that Penn State has landed from that state in the past. He's actually a graduate assistant at Marshall now. So for those wondering where he got to these days, he's working under Charles Huff. So this is the BWI Daily Recruiting
One other
Show.
thing
Go
I was
ahead,
going to
finish your
add
thought.
real quick, Greg, as also we skipped over Dan Connor too. He's a defensive analyst and
Dan
not
Connor, yes, correct.
On the recruiting staff, but he's I've had that talk with who was it, Anthony Specco, a while back about the impact Dan Connor's had on his recruitment so far. So just another guy. I mean, it speaks to just when you are recruiting for the school you attended, there is a different passion level and you have different experiences that you can draw off of. And I think Franklin has seen that now with some of the former alum that he's hired. And that seems to be certainly an area that he likes to target with his staff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You can see why, obviously, that Penn State's done very well being able to sell past success and project that for players in the future. So we'll see if they can close the deal here with Parker. But this is the BWI Daily Recruiting Show edition. He's Ryan Snyder bringing you all the latest recruiting news. I'm Greg Pickel. And let's dive into the full weekend recap now, Ryan. Parker was obviously one of, about 17 players that took official visits to Penn State this weekend. You have a really neat story up checking in with some of the commitments who took their official visit this past weekend over at BWHIillustrated.com. You gave each of those guys 4 questions to answer. So really encourage everyone to take advantage, if you're not already doing so, of our $1 for 1 year of access to On3 Plus and Insider BWI content promotion. You can do that at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the homepage. But Ryan, let's open the bidding for this official visit recap with the 2 4-star linebackers who were on hand. Whether you want to start with Tony Rojas or Tamir Robinson, both have released their list of finalists heading into the end of the month of June here. Both have also set a decision date, so I'm not sure which guy you want to start with, but probably Robinson since you had the chance to talk to him, but I'll let you take it away from there.
Well, one thing I'd say too is Jalen Thompson wasn't able to make it, so the final list was 16 guys. Jalen Thompson, I believe, missed a connecting flight, so they were down one of the uncommitted guys.
Tough flying these days, man. Tough flying these days.
Yeah, so we'll I'll be checking in on that here in the coming days to see if he's able to make it. But there were 7 uncommitted guys, I believe, was the number, and 9 committed guys was the totals. But anyway, yeah, of course, Tamir and Tony, we've talked about them, I think, on every single podcast since we have started this podcast, and we will
Yeah,
probably
I don't
talk
think
about
T
them
Frank's going to play the
many
highlight
more.
reel of Rojas this time because I think we've seen it
Yeah.
enough for lifetime. I have it burned into my memory. I can probably narrate it without seeing it. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, but Tony, of course, is set for a July 5th commitment, and there's just a ton of talk right now. Will he visit Georgia? Will he stay? Will he not visit Georgia? It's up for debate, and I'm not going to pretend I have an awesome answer there. I haven't spoken with Tony in depth about it, so I'm not exactly sure as of this morning. I've definitely have had people tell me that they do not expect him to go to Georgia. I've definitely talked to people at Georgia who seem to think that visit is not going to take place, but Tony's saying he is, and hey, who am I to doubt that? So we'll see. I don't know really what else to say about that, but I will say that I firmly believe he is going to end up a Nittany Lion. He is set to announce on July 5th, and everybody seems to be pretty much in agreement that Penn State is the team here. Family, man. Family seems to really be in Penn State's corner. His grandparents were up this weekend, both sisters, mother. There was a deep house or a deep group of the Rojas house in State College this weekend, and a lot of positive reviews about it. So I think that's trending very strong for Penn State, and I think we will know about his commitment in about 2 weeks' time. Clemson and Georgia are still technically in the mix, and technically, I think he has Miami still in the mix too. But this is definitely Georgia. Clemson is full at their position. They got 2 linebacker commitments, so I expected Georgia to be the only real competition here, and we'll see if he ends up in Athens this weekend or not. As far as Tamir has a commitment date for July 15th. Miami is definitely in the mix there. They have had his attention for a long time, and so is Brent Pry. I don't want to underestimate it. I do believe Miami's a little bit more of the contender there, but he's another guy, man. I think all signs are pointing to Penn State right now coming out of this weekend, and that was something I wrote in my weekend preview, which is you can look at a lot of cases this year where having that first visit was maybe a little more important than having that last, but I think this is truly one of those situations where having that last visit was massive, and of course having all the committed guys there too. You mentioned the committed players that I did an article with. I asked every one of them who's someone you really enjoyed kicking it with, and Tamir and Tony were mentioned by I think over half of them, maybe almost all of them. I think all but like 1 or 2 said that those were the guys that they had the most fun hanging out with. So Penn State did a great job with those 2 this weekend. I think all signs are pointing to the Nittany Lions, and we will know July 5th for Tony Rojas and July 15th for Tamir Robinson.
So as we said at the start of the show, we're getting into that time of year now, Ryan, where you're going to see a few guys maybe commit before the end of this month, but a majority of them are going to wait until next month. And I think as we saw last year, the first full week of July will be busy. That 4th of July weekend tends to be a time when prospects gravitate towards. So we'll see who else gets added to the July announcement rundown list. But at this point, just those 2 on the list for now. So we shall see. Let's move on to some other guys here. I guess we'll go next to Jakeem Jackson because that's a player you were able to chat with. He is a 3-star, I believe, on 3 consensus corner. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I believe that's right. From Kissimmee, Florida, top 60 corner in this class. Somebody that Penn State's had an eye on for quite some time, and he's not someone we've talked about much, if at all, here on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show, Ryan, but certainly seemed to really enjoy his visit to Penn State.
Well, yeah, going into June, I certainly had Daniel Harris at the top of Penn State's cornerback board. Jalen Braxton was in the mix too. Jalen's now off the board, and maybe 1 or 2 others there as well. But Jakeem has certainly moved his way up. Definitely one of their top 4 or 5 cornerback targets. He's absolutely a take, somebody they're pushing hard for. He has an official visit to Tennessee this upcoming weekend, and I think Tennessee absolutely has his attention, and I would circle them as the school that I would watch the closest. Now, with that, out of the official visits. With that said, he did get an offer from Florida in May and then just camped at Florida yesterday. That says a lot to me. He really wants that Florida offer. Now, of course, I just said he got an offer in May. He really wants that Florida offer. What does that mean? Well, as I've discussed before here, I mean, there are a ton of offers that go out that are really more so glorified camp invites. The fact that
Right.
he gets an offer in May, comes and camps in mid-June, tells me that Florida really wanted to get him on campus to solidify things. So that's what I need to figure out now here in the coming days, is kind of how did that workout go? Where does he stand on Florida's board? Because if he is a absolute take for Florida, I've had a lot of people mention, hey, Florida is certainly poking around. Florida has his interest, and we will see how those cards fall. So we
Right.
will see here. Right now, I still kind of think he's going to end up in the South. He also did take an official visit to Auburn. I don't want to overlook the Tigers as well. They're definitely in the mix. And out of the guys who have visited this weekend, Jakeem certainly feels like the biggest wild card to me. So
Yeah.
let's just kind of, every time I talk to him, it's just kind of different schools, different mentions. Penn State's consistently in it, but I just get different reads when I speak with him. Great kid, but I think he just needs to kind of figure things out. Like, for example, he previously posted he was going to commit on August 20 or October 22nd. I don't see that happening. I think he's going to have to make a commitment this summer, just like a lot of these guys are going to have to make a commitment this
Right.
summer if they don't want to potentially miss out on their top school. So keep an eye out for that. I would not be shocked at all to see Jakeem Jackson make a commitment here in the coming weeks. Now, with that said, I'll go into his teammate too, Derek LeBlanc. I haven't spoken with Derek yet. I've talked to enough people at Penn State who give me the impression that they're certainly in it. What's interesting to me is that when you speak with my colleagues out there, a lot of them think Florida is the team to beat. When I speak with contacts at Penn State, they seem to think Oklahoma's the bigger competition than Florida. So I have two different reads on that one. But I definitely still get
Right.
the vibe that Penn State is top three with Oklahoma and Florida. And this one could go a bunch of different ways if I'm being blunt about it. So we just another guy we got to read and try and follow as closely as we can here. But it was really interesting to me how much people are pushing Oklahoma with him. I don't know of Oklahoma official visit. I have to read up or
Not
dig up
set
on
yet.
that a little bit
Yeah,
more.
not set yet. Yep.
Yeah, I don't believe so, but I mean, he hasn't. I haven't talked to him, so that's he's a guy
Right.
I certainly would like to get in touch with, or have one of our colleagues help me out there with, because I don't have a great relationship with Derek, and I'm not going to pretend that I have. So we'll see. But Florida, Oklahoma are certainly the two schools there that consistently keep getting mentioned.
I don't think there's any question that the fact that his Twitter profile, Ryan, is him in an Oklahoma jersey tells you all you need to know about the fact that the Sooners are certainly
Yeah.
in the mix there. But whether or not he sets an official visit there, we'll see. Let's move on now to King Mack, a safety from Florida. His teammate Conrad Hussey is committed to the Nittany Lions. King Mack is a player that I think you have felt for a long time was Penn State's to lose, but the Lions did not lock him up over the weekend. Did that
No.
surprise you, or is this one that's just going to take a little
Yes.
bit longer than maybe we thought at first?
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, I had people telling me that he's coming up to have a celebration basically for his commitment. So that
Right.
Michigan State visit that he took last week clearly changed some things, and that's intriguing to me. Now, with that said, everybody still seems to be on board that he's going to end up at Penn State, but I'm pretty confident in saying there was quite a few people who thought he would leave campus this weekend firmly a Nittany Lion commit, and he didn't. But I do think we will hear from King Mack in the near future. He's actually someone that people mentioned to me that could potentially commit as soon as this week. But I'm still working on that. Joseph Hastings, our colleague at On Three, he is down in South Florida helping me with that situation. So hopefully we will get a little more feedback on King Mack soon. But this is definitely a Michigan State Penn State battle. Having Conrad Hussey committed is massive for Penn State. I'm not changing my pick or anything like that, but clearly Michigan State is giving them something to think about, because what I was hearing 2 weeks ago and then what happened
Right.
were a little different than what I expected.
Anyone I'm missing here, Ryan? I think we've hit
London,
most of the board here. London Montgomery, I
London,
think, is the last
yep,
one we have to knock out here. A four-star running back from Scranton, a Pennsylvania player that Penn State offered maybe a little bit later than some other schools did, Ryan, but still certainly have been on him for quite some time. And, again, he was somebody else who I think going into the weekend, it wouldn't have been shocking to see him pull the trigger, but you have been pretty adamant that he still wants to finish out his official visit stretch this year, and clearly that is the case.
yeah. He's always consistently said he wants to take a visits and take his time, and that has been told me that in March, told me that in April, told me that in May. I mean, he's never wavered from that. Now, I don't have a pick in for London for Penn State, and that's mainly just because I want to know what Trayon Webb's going to do and how that would impact some things, because Penn State doesn't have to take 2 running backs this year. Trayon
Right.
Webb is expected to commit on June 30th. Now, with that all said, I don't see any world where Penn State passes up on a 4-star running back from Pennsylvania. I mean, it's just that's too important to James Franklin. So even if Webb does commit now, I do think that Penn State will take 2 running backs, and then that of course is if Montgomery goes into July, which all signs kind of point to him doing right now. But good visit. I've been thinking he's going to end up at Penn State for a while now. I don't really have a much a reason to change that. Boston College will get him on campus this weekend. Virginia Tech got him on campus last weekend. Everybody I've talked to at Tech says, he's should be Penn State's to lose, but he's a great kid. He doesn't want to cancel on this Boston College visit, and of course, I don't want to pretend like Boston College not in it either. They certainly are. So, but I do expect him to end up at Penn State at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's sometime in July. So let's see the feedback here following this visit and go from there.
At this point, Penn State, obviously, like many schools across the country, Ryan, 100% wants to be able to host guys for official visit and land commitments. But, there was a bit of a doom and gloom feeling among the Penn State universe, I feel like, on Sunday when there weren't commitments popping like maybe we thought. But there's been good news since then. So is this maybe something that fans need to start to realize is more likely than not going to be the case moving forward, that you're going to get into these situations where guys look like they're ready to pop, but then say, you know what, I don't want to commit in the moment. I want to go home and make sure things are what I want them to be or what I expected them to be, and then I'm going to decide. Is that more likely what we're going to see moving forward here?
You already know the answer to your question, Greg. I mean, look, I understand fans' excitement. I get all that, and I understand also why fans were a bit down, I guess, over the last couple of weeks, seeing a lot of top fives and things not go Penn State's way. But Penn State has a class that's 60% full already, right? So you're going to
Yeah.
naturally, when you get that many commitments, you're going to see kids start going elsewhere just because the class is getting full. And even if Penn State's they're still a take for Penn State, they for one reason or another, it just never falls perfectly for any school. But
Right.
July is going to be a big month. No doubt about it. July is always going to be a big month for Penn State. The way they recruit, the way they get on top of guys early. Penn State's been in this pattern for years now. They get a bunch of commitments earlier than a lot of schools, which puts them up pretty high in the rankings. We've seen that for years now.
Yep.
Then April comes around, things are good, and then you see that second surge again in July. So this is just a repeating pattern that Penn State's always been, and I would expect that by the end of July, Penn State has 20 or so commitments. So I definitely see another 6, 7, 8 probably coming. And then once we get to that 21, 22, 23 number, that's where things will get interesting as far as who they pursue and where the cutoff is. I had someone ask today on our board, can they take 25? And the answer is, yeah, they could, but it has to be top players still available on the board and a reason to go over that 22, 23 area, because that's where it starts getting gray when you look at that 85 scholarship limit. But Penn State fans, guys, it's Penn State. Like, they're always going to do well. It's always been about taking that talent and developing them and producing on the field. But when it comes to recruiting, James has done that on a great level from the moment he's got here, and I don't expect that to ever change.
No, and sometimes it's going to look better than others, but there's always parts, to your point, there's always parts of the year that look better and some look worse, and it all works out in the end, which is all that really matters. Even though there's going to be high points and low points, as long as they are high points at the end, it will all be fine for Penn State, currently number 9 in the On3 consensus team rankings for the class of 2023. Ryan, let's move on to now as we get into the final week of June, the June quiet period anyway here. A couple of midweek visitors are coming to Penn State. We won't spend too much time on this. You have a full look at this on the Lions Dan message board and on the BWIDeillustrated.com homepage. But Penn State hosting a couple guys here. I'll let you get into it a little bit. But for the full rundown, it's $1 for 1 year of access. Subscribers, you should have saw this information on Monday pop up on the site. And for those who are not, join us there. But I guess it's just worth pointing out here, Ryan, that Penn State is going to try and host a couple guys as we come down the stretch here. They'll have some guys on campus this weekend, and then the visit window is closed until the end of July.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this weekend will be another big recruiting weekend. I expect probably, I mean, right now I think I have like 7 or 8 guys expected for this weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised if a couple guys get added to it. But because the dead period is coming, Penn State will host 2 midweek official visitors this week. And I talked last week about if you're on the board, you know who I'm talking about. I think that was on our Friday pod. Well, these are the players I'm talking about. Miles Walker, offensive tackle out of Brunswick in Connecticut. I'm expecting him to be on campus today for an official visit that will run to Thursday. Then tomorrow on Wednesday, I'm expecting Stanton Ramel, another offensive tackle prospect from Alabama, to be on campus, and it will run through Friday morning. Stanton will then go directly from Penn State to Michigan State, which was previously his final scheduled, or was still his final scheduled official visit, but that's been scheduled for a little while now. Now, I will keep some details on their recruitments behind the paywall, but what I'm going to say is this. I also caught up with Evan Link this past week, and it was an important interview because Evan's been pretty quiet for a while. Evan Link is still very much Penn State's most important offensive tackle prospect, and I expect that to stay the case. Evan did not make it to Michigan last weekend, which was interesting because they were certainly a school that, I mean, I absolutely had my eye on. I mean, he's only down to 3 schools, Penn State, Stanford, and Michigan. So the fact that he missed one of those official visits was certainly grabbed my attention. He had the flu last week and wasn't able to make it, but he will go to Stanford this upcoming weekend. Let's see where things stand after that. Academics are massively important with Evan, and I think Penn State's in a good position there, but man, Stanford's just such a wild card in that whole
Right.
academic dynamic that I'm hesitant to put a pick in because I know academics are important. I don't know how important, and that's an answer that I don't think we'll really get from Evan until it's all said and done. He'll say it's massively important, but what is the balance? You know, how important is big time football too? Because that's he says they're all important, which they of course are, but which one is more important, basically? So, of course, Penn State has a great chemical engineering program. I think he said chemical engineering and mechanical engineering and what he wants to focus on. So that will be big. But let's see how these official visits go with Miles Walker and Stanton Ramel. Both guys are important. Of course, Josh Miller decommitted as well. So it's not like if they get Evan, they can't pursue these guys. But I also just don't want fans to think that they're not trending well with Evan because they are. They lost Josh Miller, and heck, we were projecting as many as 6 offensive linemen in this class at one point. They're down to 3 now.
Right.
So Stanton and Miles are certainly guys in the mix. I'll say this: Miles Walker took official visits to Ohio State and Texas A&M. He also has official visits to Duke and Vanderbilt. So there's a little bit of a mixture of schools there. Where he is exactly on Ohio State and A&M's board, I'm not exactly sure, but they brought him for official visits. So the schools aren't wasting those officials if they're not intrigued. With Ramel,
Right.
he's been at Auburn a ton. He doesn't live far from Auburn. Been there for 7 visits, I think it is now. Tennessee is another official visit that he has scheduled. Or excuse me, he has already taken. Pitt was a visit he took, and then, like I said, he's expected to go to Michigan State after the Penn State visit. So we will see. But Ramel was also here before as well. He did take an unofficial visit in May. But we'll leave some other details on those guys behind the board, and we'll have a better feel for things once these visits wrap up.
Let's jump into the final thoughts segment here on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. That was Ryan Snyder with the latest news on Penn State recruiting. Ryan, I don't know where you want to kick things off here. I mean, I don't think you and I have been on the air since Tyreek Blanding committed. So for those of you who maybe didn't see that news for whatever reason, the New York defensive lineman was to announce last Saturday, moved that up to last Friday night and picked the Lions. A good get there for Penn State, Ryan, at a position of need and, could kick off a domino effect here.
Yeah, I mean, T. Frank and I talked about it a ton, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We did a separate video on it, and we did Friday podcast as well. So we did a lot on Blanding, but uh, really to get quality defensive tackle prospects. Like I said, Blanding is a guy who I look at as a lot of above average qualities, right? And he seems very coachable, or at least that's what people tell me. So when you have a lot of, there's no glaring strengths, there's no glaring weaknesses. He's consistent in a lot of different areas. So that's what you want when you're trying to mold prospects and get them to the next level and really take their game to the next level. So I think it's
Right.
an important commitment for them. They are still very interested in Derek LeBlanc, Jason Moore, of course. You know, we've talked a lot about Jason Moore, still here, Notre Dame, Penn State seem like they're in a good position, but I need to learn a little bit more about that Michigan State visit. And of course, he has Ohio State coming up, and I will never, ever, ever sleep on Larry Johnson with top prospects in Maryland. Penn State fans should know that story by now. So let's see how that plays out. As far as some other final thoughts, I mean, Penn State has 2 camps this weekend coming up. They have another midweek camp tomorrow, Wednesday, June 22nd. I expect Andrew Rappelier to come down and work out with the staff. So that'll be fun to see him up close. He's a guy I haven't really seen in person. And then the big 7-on-7 tournament is Friday as well. I'm still working on a list for that, but I expect so DeMatha will be one of the big schools that are always here. I think Good Counsel will be
Right.
here. They're usually consistently here, and there will be a bunch of others as well. We'll have that list up here in the coming days. I will get a list up for Wednesday's camp, hopefully sometime Tuesday evening or Wednesday. Like I said, Andrew Cumming is certainly the top guy to focus on, but I am expecting a few other guys who like especially 2024 guys who have a couple Division I offers to be here and potential guys to keep an eye on down the road.
For the latest Penn State football news, recruiting information, and inside access to the Nittany Lions you can't find anywhere else, join us at BWIillustrated.com, where it's just $1 for 1 year of access. That'll do it for this week's BWI Daily Recruiting Show. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. We'll catch you next week, and until then, stay tuned for the latest Nittany Lions news at BWIillustrated.com.